Hey there, what's up, guys? After my somewhat war critical video yesterday, I thought I would come up with something that might be a little bit more positive or maybe at least a little bit more fun. So I'll tell you where I get all my good ideas from, right? I was sort of looking around on Twitter the other day and somebody posted a page with the baseball reference estimates as to what Barry Bonds would look like if he had played his career in Coors Field. And yeah, I mean, it was somewhat interesting, I suppose. But I want to show you sort of like the real interesting things that come into this when we look at Barry Bonds and this sort of like extreme player and how he would look if he were put into different eras. So we're going to look here at his page, first of all, and we'll see where we go from here. So we'll look over here at our screen. This is Barry Bonds on Baseball Reference, right? We know about his incredible career. We know about all this stuff. We know about the record-setting, OBS. We know about his huge number of intentional walks. We know about his large number of career home runs. We know about the 73 home run season in 2001 and on, right? This stuff is just fine. Now, we want to go see where we can have some fun. So it's not over here in more. It's actually under Finders and Advanced Stats. Right. Some of this stuff is interesting. I haven't actually looked at some of this stuff before. Neutralized stats is what we want, though. And when we click on this, it will take us over here to StatHead. So StatHead, just so you know, is a subscription service. I think it costs like $9 a month from Baseball Reference. As you can see, I pay for it. There are reasons why I pay for it, and this is actually not one of them, right? The reason why I really like using this is because it helps me look up things like WPA and the championship leverage index and stuff like that really quickly and find a lot of stuff that would be hard to find otherwise. It's not perfect. I'm still looking for something that will allow me to like look up total zone, defensive rating for every single player in history so I can see who the worst ones are so I can focus on them. There may be a reason why they don't want me to do that. But let's go take a look at what we can see here with Barry Bonds from this part of his career and put him into a different environment. Now, since this is coming out after my 1908 game, we're going to put him in 1908, and we're going to change this here to, does this even allow us to? American League, we want to find the Washington Senators, and this was probably be under... let's see, the Minnesota Twins, I think. Yeah, 1901 to present. So the way that this is presented isn't really that great. Let's go ahead and click on Get Results, though, and see what happens. Okay, it sorts it by home run. We're going to change this over to per year. So this is what every single year of Barry Bonds' career looks like if it's put into the 1908 Washington Senators Park, which I know from another page that we'll look at in a second is one of the most hitter-unfriendly parks in the history of baseball. So we're talking about 1908, which is the season in which batting average had plummeted. We're talking about Barry Bonds, one of the greatest players of all time, and we're going to go look and see what his statistics look like. Now, I will tell you that the vast majority of people who follow baseball history are not going to accept the fact that his 1986 season gives him 13 home runs in 1908, right? The vast majority of people who are watching this are going to say that doesn't pass the smell test. It doesn't pass the smell test that Barry Bonds in only a 1908 environment has 614 home runs. It definitely doesn't pass the smell test that he has 58 in 2001. Before we look at anything else, we would say, well, how could that be, right? Wouldn't you see like a ballpark that is larger, or wouldn't he have more difficulty seeing the ball with white shirts in the background, or hitting against pitchers throwing, emery balls and curve balls and shine balls and all the other things that happened in 1908, or with a ball that is dirtied because they rolled around in the dirt and used the same ball over and over again, and on and on and on, right? There are a lot of other arguments we can make about, well, Bonds was bigger, Bonds was stronger. If we transport him into 1908, what kind of nutrition would he have, and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to get into that stuff right now, right? Because it's stuff that we can't really calculate for. We can't really hold for that. The reason why I'm showing this to you is that though it's really cool to use this tool, you have to be careful with it, because the truth is that the algorithmic adjustment that it makes no sense in the context of the season. Right? If he had these kind of stats in 1908, especially these home run stats, I mean, he would be totally out of this world, right? This is just simply not happening. It's just simply not happening. There's no way. Batting average, I think, is okay, though I would say that he probably would end up looking a little bit more like sort of this type of hitter for most of his career. But home runs would end up being redistributed. Now, we can look over here, and this is the thing I was talking about. This is their explanation. I mentioned yesterday I had a problem with, parts of WAR that are not explained. When it comes to these neutralized stat adjustments, this is actually explained really, really well. We've been looking through and seeing, how all of this stuff is adjusted over time. Notice here, there are no adjustments for segregation, for improved travel or fitness, nutrition, increased foreign talent, and all this stuff. We're going to talk about that stuff, especially in my blog as we go along, right? There's a reason why you don't really want to adjust for this. There's no consideration either for whether the game is better or worse over time, which is something that is impossible to prove, right? So there's a reason why we're not talking about stuff that comes up frequently in these arguments. You'll also notice that there's no change of a role for a player, which means that Pedro Martinez only makes 30 starts this season if you put him in the 1914 AL, which is pretty interesting, right? If you were going to do this carefully and do it the right way, you might make a few adjustments for that and say, well, Martinez would pitch probably in a four-man rotation, right? However, things like at-bats do go up as run scoring increases, which is pretty cool. But the problem here is we read through how batters are adjusted, is what happens with this conversion is we assume that a player will get singles, doubles, triples, home runs, walks, hit by pitcher, and stolen bases in the same proportion to overall hits as before. That's where the problem lies, right? And this is where the issue lies overall. That's the reason why when we're looking at Barry Bonds, we're seeing that his extra base hit totals, or the way his slugging percentage is going to be meted out the same way that it was according to what he did in real life, right? It is a problem. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is probably going to make people who defend this type of neutralization really upset. It's not okay if you just use this for some other season or some other random run scoring environment or anything like that. If there's a problem with taking Barry Bonds from 2001 and putting him to 1908 and it just doesn't pass the smell test, there's going to be a problem with taking him from any season and putting him into any season, right? In other words, if you are creating a baseball game and you're looking for a way to create an automatic neutralized algorithm, you need to be careful. This procedure is not going to work. It's not going to work. I haven't done this yet. If you take Barry Bonds in OOTP and shove his 2001 season into 1908 and he hits like 60 home runs, you're going to look at this and say, what a ripoff. This is awful, right? Because you're not really taking him and putting him into 1908. You're doing a very simplistic neutralization calculation that doesn't work that well. Now, I'm not the only person who's thought about this, right? There are other people who've thought about the same thing. I've talked about this before with others on certain forums and other places. My preferred explanation for how to do this is the one that comes from Bill Staffa, right? His so-called T3 normalization system, which goes into his dynasty sets, consists a lot more of looking at this and being very careful and making sure that your outlier players with the tons of home runs, or your Owen Wilson with 36 triples in 1912 or whatever it is not going to be such an outlier that they do crazy things in that season, right? We don't want to see like Ty Cobb come up from 1908, put him in 2001 and see him play offense with like no home runs. It wouldn't make sense. He probably would hit home runs. In other words, you have to readjust the slugging percentage to account for how people played in that actual environment and make sure there's a cap on what you're doing. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the subject. Love to hear what your thoughts are. Talk to you later. Bye.